what is gamification? That's a little different than World of Warcraft, isn't it? Remember when we said that the GAMESMOOC for this time, GAMESMOOC 2, is going to show you how to take your class and transform it into a massive online game. Yes, thank you, Sabir. Gamification, I practiced it in 2003, 2004, and then I wrote 4 papers about the experience. With my graduate students who were taking an online class, I realized that I had a lot of students. I had 30 students, and I was trying to figure out how to motivate them to get work done early. It was only a 5.5-week class, which is really fast. And I needed the quality of work to be higher. So I decided, instead of using points, and I normally use 1,000 points so I don't have trouble doing math, right? Even numbers, large numbers, because I like everything to be worth a lot. So we feel very compelled to do it, right? I do like psychological motivations. Anyway, so I transformed the points to gold, and I was giving out gold each week, right? And for which is our family right to privacy, right? We do not disclose what people are getting for grades or for gold or for points or whatever. So what I did was I asked everyone to assume an alias and send it to me anonymously. No one else was allowed to know their alias. Then I seeded the list with non-player characters, people who were not in the class. And I seeded a few at the top and a few at the bottom. None of them were the topmost person, and none of them were the bottommost person, but they were around in all of that stuff somewhere, right? The reason I did this is so people could not detect who's who as easily, even though they may have seen the performance of each other on the discussion forums and in the activities, okay? Then each week I would distribute gold and reputation and titles, etc., and I would publish the list of the standings, how people were doing. And there were a lot more people than there were in a class because of the non-player characters. And I would scramble those. So they would be moving through the list back and forth. And I scrambled them very carefully. So they were only a few points off. So you couldn't detect that all of a sudden someone had lost points when they should have gained, right? None of that. I was very careful. I was playing the game, can others detect who's who, and can I mask that? And it was a lot of fun for me. It kept me really busy. The students loved it. In fact, they loved it so much they were posting earlier, posting higher quality content, posting additional posts. And when the class got done, everyone except for one person asked for more work. And I said, but the class is done. We're losing access to the course tool. It's time to move on to another class next term. And they did not want to stop playing. And I thought that was a very interesting commentary on gamification. Or luddification? Yeah. Well, it could be. But the point to the story here is that they were highly motivated. They found it far more interesting than getting points. The subject hadn't changed. They loved the subject, by the way. They were graduate students in computer science, and these were fun classes. But it made no difference. Time is always your enemy, right? You always have too many things to do, too many demands on your attention. So it's very hard to focus, right? You need motivators. And to shift your priorities a little bit. Now, I'm not saying I took priorities away from the new baby or the family member who needed them. No. All I was trying to do was encourage them that for their leisure time, choose learning first. Okay? Now, how many of you know Peggy Sheehy and the Ramapo Project? She's now doing WOW in school, if that helps. Lyrification, that's it. Okay, good. Hey, Kevin, it's so good to see you. I've been talking about GAMESMOOC. Anyway, so, yeah, Peggy has done quite a few things. And, I was a mentor for her at Ramapo from 2007 when they first moved over to the teen grid up until it left. The last year or so, my mentorship was sluggish, I have to confess. I only went in to help with a few design or scripting moments. But the first couple of years were very intense, and we had some wonderful experiences. Among them, I noticed that 50% of her students, and she had 400 students every year, had social characters, teen grid characters that could not get on the school property, characters that they had created themselves, right? Even though they had those, they were logging into their school characters and were on the school property until 11 at night, which is a little late to go to school, right? And I would have to chase them to bed because I'd be thinking, well, you're 13 years old and you have to be up in the morning, and I don't want to be responsible for you staying up all night. That doesn't sound like good citizenship, right? from a mentor. But I thought it was marvelous. Bye, Franz. Great to see you. Marvelous that they were choosing to learn. And that's what we mean by hudagogy, by self-determined learning, by being energized. Well, I have far too much content, so let me whip into a little bit more of it, and then the rest of it you can digest or we'll cover another time. Here's some examples of immersive environments, and I use the letter G for games, and let's whip into a little bit of it. This is an image of one. This is on virtual harmony, which is some research that Andy Stricker has running out of his basement in an OpenSim build using open source tools. And he and I wrote an IRB proposal and got it approved and have been conducting research in virtual harmony. And this is the mission to Mars. This is the export of our Mars expedition, which won $25,000 in the Federal Virtual World Challenge in 2010. He exported it to virtual harmony. And here's the lander, the Deep Space Explorer approaching the dock. Now here's virtual harmony migrated into Unity 3D. He's doing a lot with mesh models. I have to admit, I've been a little Luddite when it comes to mesh. I'm still old school, right, on my designs. But he's using the mesh models, which gives him portability to other tools. So he creates stuff for Second Life that he can use in OpenSim and virtual harmony and in Moses, which is the military Open Simulator Enterprise strategy for characterizing a 3D grid or 3D world with open source tools for everyone to use, that's currently funded by our U.S. Army Simulation and Training Technology Center. But I think there's over 260 researchers working on that effort. And we've just created something Doug Maxwell has called Moses in a Box, that gives it portability so people can install it in their own home systems, connect to the grid, and start instantiating their own schools with less of a cognitive load, less of a burden, making it easy for people to participate with no prior skills. I think that's an important distinction here, because I know there's over 200 virtual worlds out there in grids, but we know that there's a high cognitive load for instantiating them, right? That's right, Kimera. Yep. Well, anyway, this is, and he's modeled it after his wife here. That's his wife standing there. But anyway, this is Unity 3D, looking a bit like Second Life because the mesh models have been ported to there. Here's our hostage rescue game, where we began in the 2008 time frame, and one of my doctoral students ran research in there, and our last speaker was one, who volunteered and helped to analyze it. We want to thank him. And they were analyzing shared leadership in games, and I don't think she's put out a report to the group, but she did complete her research, and discovered some amazing things. We went to the Simulation Modeling Conference in Boston. I chaired the Innovations track, and Andy Stricker, who's Spinoza Quinnell, chaired the overall, and she presented her research there, and there's some of the participants in their various roles. Now, the reason I'm using this, what shape is this, by the way? And I am looking at the time. I'll wrap up in the next 9 minutes or less, maybe 4. Be kind. It's a peace symbol, and yet what word do I have over on the right vertically? I have the opposite of peace, don't I? I have violence. See the violence? Yeah. And the reason I have it there is violence startles us. It makes us think we don't like it, especially if it's against us, right? And we certainly like to manage, control, constrain. And the whole purpose, by the way, of the hostage rescue game was not to be violent, but instead to minimize conflict and to rescue a United Nations worker who's been shot in the leg, right? Meanwhile, the instructors are sitting in a games operations center, and this is all in Second Life at My Base Zeta. And they can control the doors, the landmines, all the stuff, the artificial sources of conflict, right, that we have to dodge. And while they're doing that, They also they have little Pez-like dispensers in that box in the lower right corner that shows where we are on the property. So they can see where we are as we're running around, if we've separated, what our scores are, and they can up the conflict without ever introducing an avatar near us. Okay, so that's an example of a game here in a virtual world. Now, I ran a little talk for the prior year's Simulation and Modeling Conference, and I was comparing strategy games, like Empire Earth or Civilization, etc., to virtual world simulation games. I'm not going to get into it here, but I included some of that content here for those of you who are interested in weaving your own games. But please realize, for those of you who are not gamers or have not created games before, it's not hard to participate. It's not hard to create a game. Because remember, it begins with a story, some rules, and a win condition. We have to know the outcome. It's very similar to constructing a learning experience, if you think about it. It's just now you get to make up what kind of imaginary incentives, real or imagined, are we going to be using, right? Win. Win. That's so cute. I love that. Yeah. This notion of winning. Now, in my classes, everyone can win. So while they were competitive in the sense they could see who was on top, the Dread Pirate Roberts was on top, followed by Darth Vader. You see where this is going? And they were gender neutral, so guys and gals mixed and matched whatever names they went by. And of course, the hardest thing for me was to keep them from telling each other who's who, because they wanted to brag. And that's an important thing about games, is that the fact that you like other people to know how well you're doing, right? Now, they can tell based on your participation that you're knowledgeable and a thought leader, right? But it's an interesting component. There are some distinctions between the two, and I've included a few here, but in the interest of time, and so our hosts do not panic. I also included a little assessment tool, because let's face it, we're educators, right? So we have to figure out ways to assess whether someone knows it, adapts to it, learns, or has advanced knowledge. What's this knowledge construction, right? And then when do they cheat? In games, you can cheat. And I know you can in learning, too. Now, in games, we consider that a positive thing, like the Kobayashi Maru. What genre, what TV show am I quoting when I say the Kobayashi Maru? This notion of the no-win scenario and the fact that it's unacceptable to us. That's right, Coco, Star Trek. This notion that we always like to have a way of winning. We'd like our heroes not to die. We would like goodness to triumph, and it would like it to be us. So on this assessment tool that I have in the slides, this is one we use to assess progress through the game and comprehension. Well, these were some of the word art I used, and I gave you it's from Image Chef, if you ever wish to use it. It's very fast, very simple. You just construct your words, you hit a button, and poof, you have it. And it can be free. I actually paid a small fee to get the logo off so that my illustrations were clean. Now, the rest of the slides are just links, and they're categorized for you. Here's game creation tools, including one of my favorites from like 10 years ago, hot potatoes. Anyone use it? It'll create crossword puzzles for you that you can throw on the web. They're HTML friendly. Yeah, I love it.